All right, folks, we have a breaking news update to our previous video, and I'm happy to report that it is excellent friggin' news. Donald Trump's threats against Indiana Republicans backfired spectacularly, and on a brutal, decisive vote of 31-19, they once again shot down his demands for a gerrymandered map in Indiana. Donald Trump has been defeated in Indiana for a second time, even more brutal than the first. He and MAGA are going to be pissed, and we should be delighted. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, again, this is relatively breaking news. I posted about it on the community wall. This is the first video. At the time of recording this, and we'll double check before we hop off, Donald Trump has not publicly responded to this yet, but I am sure he will. And I'm sure he knows about it already, and he's pissed. As Fact Post reports, despite Donald Trump's demands, I would argue threats, the Indiana State Senate has voted against Republican-led redistricting efforts. In other words, Republican gerrymandering to take it from 7-2 to 9-0. Heritage Action, which are political allies of Donald Trump, they're part of the Heritage Foundation, the people who issued the threat that we discussed in the most recent video talking about this. Remember, this is what they said just 6 hours ago. They said Donald Trump has made it clear to Indiana leaders, if the Indiana Senate fails to pass the map, all federal funding will be stripped from the state. Roads will not be paved. Guard bases will close. Major projects will stop. These are the stakes, and every no vote will be to blame. Hashtag pass the map. Plain, illegal, unconstitutional, explicit, corrupt, authoritarian blackmail and extortion. And it fucking backfired. It backfired. It may have even radicalized more Republicans to vote it down, because when this thing was rejected the first time around, if I remember correctly, just a month or so ago, it was like 25-25. It was a tie. Then it became 31-19. Well, this is how these same assholes who are threatening Republicans responded. Very different. The Indiana Senate's vote today is a major disappointment, but the fight is far from over. Major disappointment today in Indiana. Lawmakers had a chance to stand with voters and Donald Trump and get an updated congressional map on the books. They failed to make the cut. Heritage Action will keep fighting to make sure Indiana voters have a choice and voice in the midterms. No is not an answer. Tiffany Justice, Executive Vice President, Heritage Action. And it's already getting ratioed to back. People are rightly mocking Heritage Action, as well they should. And by the way, we shouldn't forget this. The threat should be taken seriously, but these people should be relentlessly, publicly mocked forever. Again, this backfired on them spectacularly. Dave Wasserman of Cook Political Report. This is huge. This is a guy who tracks congressional redistricting and voting maps, things that he is the premier data analyst with a lot of this stuff. He says, Republicans' mid-decade redistricting war on track to yield minimal, if any, gains. Biggest remaining variables, Florida, Louisiana, Virginia, which could cancel out. Okay, so this means what happened in Indiana may well have totally screwed Trump's efforts to rig the 2026 midterms in advance. Now, again, we can't just close the book on it. We can't just assume that it's over, but this is a major victory for democracy and a major victory for Trump, and we have to keep the momentum going. So let's look at this, okay? Let's dive into some of the reporting. Indiana Senate Republicans reject Trump's redistricting push. Let's see. Rejecting Trump's months-long campaign to pressure the Republican supermajority in the deep red state to bend to his will. The 31-19 vote saw 21 Republicans join 10 Democrats in voting down the proposed map that would have positioned the GOP, which currently holds 7 of the 9 U.S. House seats in Indiana, for a sweep of all 9 seats in the next year's midterms. The vote comes with significant ramifications for the 2026 midterm elections, as some Democratic and Republican-led states aim to redraw their U.S. House maps beforehand. Not gaining 2 seats limits the gains that Republicans are seeking to make in the redistricting arms race that Trump launched. And I appreciate CNN noting that. Trump started this. This is objectively 100% his fault. It's not 50-50. It's not 90-10. It's 100%. Republican politicians are the bad guys. Democratic politicians are the good guys. No moral ambiguity. All his fault. All their fault. Indiana's rejection, and I should say, obviously, with the exception of the Indiana Republicans who refused to comply here, they actually put not just their political careers. Remember, these people were being sent death and bomb threats, not just to them, but to their family members as a consequence of Trump's threats against them. So they risked not only their careers, but their lives to tell Trump no here. So I'm going to give them their flowers here. They shouldn't support him at all. They shouldn't have supported him in the first place. But when the chips were down and they had every reason to fold and capitulate, they didn't. Kudos to them. Indiana's rejection also revealed the limits of Trump's political might. The Trump administration dispatched J.D. Vance to Indiana for 2 visits and invited state lawmakers to the White House as part of their lobbying effort. Trump, Vance, and Republican allies threatened to run primary challengers against senators who didn't approve the new map. Instead, a majority of Indiana's Senate Republican caucus voted no. Republican Senator Greg Goode criticized, quote, over-the-top pressure from inside the state house and out, as well as, quote, threats of violence, acts of violence. Goode was one of several lawmakers who faced swatting attempts last month after Trump posted on social media calling him a rhino, a Republican in name only. Quote, whether we realize it or not, whether we accept it or not, the forces that define this vitriolic political affairs in places outside of Indiana have been gradually and now very blatantly infiltrated the political affairs in Indiana, Goode said before voting no. Goode said that the, quote, overwhelming feedback from constituents in his Terre Haute-based district was to oppose the redistricting effort. He also raised the possibility that the new maps could, quote, politically backfire against Republicans by weakening their support in some districts. A pro-redistricting Republican, Liz Brown, said passing the new maps, quote, actually is about trying to predetermine political outcomes. Absolutely. It's a privilege policymakers have. So she's openly admitting it. She's openly admitting, I want to be very clear. She says, yes, this is about rigging the game and advantaging the Republicans because we don't think we can win a fair political fight. Quote, the only way we can bolster Republican voices in Congress is to do this. Again, I appreciate the transparency here. I appreciate that. The state's 2 legislative leaders, Speaker Todd Houston and Senate Pro Tem Roderick Bray, previously met with Trump as it became clear the Indiana House would vote for the new map, but the Senate's outcome was uncertain. Trump led a weeks-long pressure campaign against Bray, threatening to back primary opponents against him and other reluctant senators, Republican senators in 2026 and 2028. His allies, including the Club for Growth, Turning Point USA, and a new group led by veteran Indiana Republican operative Mary Opes and several veterans of Trump's presidential campaigns, aired advertisements, held a State House rally, and took to social media to vow to unseat senators who broke with Trump's wishes. Governor Mike Braun, who was completing his first year in office, also publicly backed Trump's redistricting push and floated the possibility of a challenge to Bray's Senate leadership post after Bray insisted last month the chamber did not have the votes to pass new maps. So, let's see. It's talking about Vance and Don Jr., but senators refusing to vote for the map argued their constituents didn't want redistricting, and dozens of Indiana residents who spoke to CNN said they agreed. So, not good. All right, let's take a look at what Politico has to say. Indiana Republicans have withstood immense pressure. The members held out in spite of pipe bombs threats, unsolicited pizza deliveries to their homes, again, which is very threatening, and swatting, where SWAT teams and police are called into their homes as well. Quote, we have a huge problem, said former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon. Quote, people have to realize that we only get a couple of opportunities. We've got a net of 5 to 10 seats. If we don't get a net 10 pickup in the redistricting wars, it's going to be enormously hard, if impossible, to hold the House. Quote, I wouldn't call it a setback, says Mike Johnson, who reversed his stance on getting involved in redistricting by whipping votes with calls to individual lawmakers, told reporters earlier in the day before the state Senate voted, but I've got to deal with whatever matters are presented in each state, and we're going to win. We've got a better record to run on. Johnson predicted earlier this week the maps would pass, so he's just wrong on that. Yeah, so folks, this is not good. Republicans are full-blown freaking out. Again, I'm curious if Trump has responded to this. Not as of yet. Has J.D. Vance responded yet? Looks like J.D. Vance is radio silent as well. Yep, a lot of people are upset right now. A lot of people, a lot of MAGA is pissed off. We're definitely going to be tracking this. This is a huge, public rejection of Trump, a humiliation of Trump. This is because he's invested quite a bit of political capital to make this happen. This wasn't just a minor thing. He publicly and privately pressured this to happen. This was a full court press, and it failed spectacularly on his home turf. This defeat cannot be overstated. So we will definitely keep track of this. And I will definitely let you know when he responds, because it's really good to celebrate this. We got to rub their defeat in their face. We need to be inspired by the victory. And we also need to keep the momentum going. So There you have it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.